Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to this session, Reimagining Workplaces, Cultivating Inclusion, Attracting More Women into STEM. My name is Jacqueline Tanzer, and I have the pleasure of moderating this important conversation. Before I start, I'd just like to say that I hope many of you had the chance to look around the competition today. And if you haven't, that you'll have the chance to do so in the coming days. And if you have no time, I'd strongly recommend you make some time. Because I've been a competitor myself, and I was a part of the WorldSkills Champions Trust, which is a group of past competitors that act as youth ambassadors for this movement. And all this is to say, I hope you're inspired by the competition and see how important it is that we're here and we're having this conversation and we're moving PTvT to the top of the global agenda. So this session is about women in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We all know the representation of women in these fields remains disproportionately low. And despite progress, women still face significant challenges, ranging from unconscious bias and systemic oppression to a lack of role models and supportive networks. So in today's session, we will talk about the realities of these challenges, and we look at various projects that have made strides in bridging the gender gap in STEM. So the session is a complementary session to the panel discussion on building gender equity in skills that happened earlier today. Maybe some of you had the chance to attend that. And the session in the morning focused more on abstract policies, and we want to focus more on a practical approach here and look at best practice projects. So speaking of those projects we're going to hear about, I want to introduce our distinguished panel to you, and I will start immediately to my left with Beatrice, who is the director of the Dutch STEM platform Talent for Technology, or short PTvT, and she leads efforts to promote STEM education and labour market development in the Netherlands. Beatrice also chairs the EU STEM Coalition. Then we have Maria Ehler, Professor of International Business and Entrepreneurship at the University of Southern Denmark and Talents for AA Ambassador. Maria's research focuses, amongst other things, on internationalization, talent management, skilled migrants, and returnees. Then we have Biljana Radonic-Kalinze, who is an Associate Director for Access to Skills and Employment at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. Biljana has over 20 years of international experience in leading policies and programs in Europe, Central Asia, and North Africa. Next to her, we have Priscilla Gatonye, who is the Program Officer for Inclusion of Youth at UNESCO-UNEVOC. Priscilla works on a global scale to promote inclusive technical and vocational education and training with a focus on youth and underrepresented groups, including women. And last but not least, we have Albine Tessier, who's the head of Life Science and Healthcare France at Acodis. She has over 20 years experience in the life science industry. Her career has spanned a wide range of technology and life science related positions, where she held a variety of positions from activity manager in chemistry and microbiology laboratories to senior management positions in various types of organizations. Our panelists will share their insights and examples of successful programs and policies with us today that hopefully help us reimagine workplaces to become more inclusive and supportive for women in STEM. Now, to get us warmed up, I'd like to ask all the speakers, probably starting with you, Beatrice, what is your personal experience or relationship to STEM, and how do you remember learning about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics?
Good afternoon, everybody. Well, my experience was that at school I did like the STEM subjects. I wasn't particularly good at it, but also not very bad. I'm just average. But then I had this physics teacher, and he said, "Oh, you're a girl. You only have a 7 out of 10. That's not good enough. So you better drop it." So I was actually thinking about of choosing it. My father was a dentist. I thought, well, maybe one day I want to be a dentist, and then you need physics. But then I sort of at the age of, we choose relatively young in the Netherlands, so I was like 15, 14, 15. I dropped physics, and that was the end of my STEM career for the future. So, and afterwards I thought that was a pity, and that I should have done it, because this teacher only wanted the boys with an A or or 10 in the class to choose it. So it was not a really good experience. So that's got me motivated to do more about it for my children.
So good afternoon. If I continue, I think I have a bit of the same experience. I enjoyed a lot the STEM stuff as long as I was in the comprehensive school and in high school. But then the issue of going for engineering, which I would have liked, was they were all boys, and I didn't feel comfortable at all with the idea. And my parents were saying, you better get a proper job, you know, like economist or something like that, you know, not some sort of natural sciences. So then I went for the business studies.
Yeah, that's not good to hear that you were discouraged, or definitely not encouraged to do further STEM-related subjects. What about you, Biljana?
I can't say that STEMs was my strength. My likes were mostly in history, literature, and so on. So I can't identify with you. So my interest in women in STEMs comes from professional, and just the fact that women are half of the labor force and untapped resource, and we see that the world is going towards green economy, digital economy transition, and I want to make sure that women are equally represented in that world.
Priscilla?
Okay, I think mine is going to be longer because I'm a storyteller. So I grew up in a small town in Kenya called Nakuru, and I went through public school like everyone else. I think a lot of people from Kenya go through public school from early education all the way to higher education. And to be on the cool side of events, you have to learn sciences. So mathematics, sciences, I remember cramming the mathematical table because mathematics was very important. So for a lot of us, we ended up in science courses. But at the age of 15, you were supposed to choose whether you were going to advance with 3 sciences. So this is biology, physics, and chemistry, or you have to drop one of it and join a different stream of school. So at this point, if you want to be on the cool side of life, you have to choose all of the 3. But you have, of course, to go against the stereotypes where they think that girls cannot do it. So I ended up doing my 3 sciences, and luckily I got all A's because that is the only thing I was reading. But how you get to higher education was now the trick question, because getting into university, you have to get a weighted approach of it. So they get a mean score weighted against all the other subjects, and that already pushes you down. So you get a lower main score, and that pushes you out from getting into the big 5. So the big 5 for us was, by the time it was medicine, it was architecture, engineering, law, or something like I can't remember the other one, but yeah. So it was like the big 5 courses that you wanted to be part of. So eventually, since I could not get into the high level, despite me getting all A's in the 3 sciences, I ended up going for the next best thing, which was social science and economics. So that is my introduction to sciences, and that's what I remember.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. For my part, I would like you to imagine a young girl looking for the first time through a microscope and captivated by the invisible worlds and very busy worlds. It was the first time I saw everything about STEM and about biology, geology. At classes, I was very exalted by biology, geology, and chemistry, physics. To be very honest with you, I don't like mathematics. It's just a mess for me. So I have to be honest. And I fell in love with understanding how forms, lives, develops and grows in this microbiological world. I discovered in my journey the meeting point between life science and healthcare. And I'm still curious with the new technology at all in the life science industry. And I have a lot of chance to become to build the future in industry and pharmaceutical industry.
Thank you. Beatrice, if we can start with you again, I would like to ask you to explain a bit more to us what is this platform Talent for Technology and why, when and why did it start in the Netherlands?
Well, the Netherlands have a long history of trying to promote STEM with young people in the Netherlands. And already in the 1980s, we had these campaigns done by the government. And they said girls should choose STEM, more or less, but then, of course, in Dutch. And but unfortunately, it didn't work out. So about over 20 years ago, when the Lisbon goals in Europe were set, and we said we have to compete as Europe with Asia and North America for research talent, and the Netherlands were very low on the list in numbers of graduates in STEM. The Dutch government said we really have to do something different, and they set up this foundation, which is now called the Platform for Science and Technology in the Netherlands, and in Dutch it's PTvT. And 3 ministries work together. It's the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Economic Affairs, and the Ministry of Social Affairs. And they put money into this foundation, and they ask the people who work there to make sure that the private sector match the money they put into the foundation in order to do it differently than these communication campaigns. And these communication campaigns, if you look at the numbers of students choosing STEM, especially girls, because it was focused on girls, they didn't work at all because the numbers only went down, down and down after the 80s. And in the 2000s, it was really at the lowest number. So this foundation tried to do it differently and work together more better with schools, always try to interact with company and industry, also make sure that they co-finance the approach, and also make sure that we work on the whole pipeline of STEM, as we call it in the Netherlands. So, and that means starting at a young age, from primary schools up to the higher vocational education and universities, and also together with local or regional governments. In the Netherlands, we call that the triple helix. So it's government, it's industry, and it's the schools and the education system. And then for the next thing, we also said it has to be a long-term approach. In the past, we did a lot of projects. They were always very short, like 1, 2, 3 years. You always had to do something new. And before you knew it, the program or the project was finished. And we didn't measure the results. We didn't know if it was successful. We didn't actually know what was successful or what was working, because we also monitored too little and we didn't do enough research. So that was also part of the program, to make sure that we monitor better and we know more about the evidence that what is working. So now we're 25 years later. It goes with ups and downs, because it's always, the government always says, this is our goal and this is the money you're going to get. Sometimes it's a lot and the goal is very clear. And if we measure it well and we know how to interact with all the partners, we have done quite well, also in women in some of the sectors. But then usually after a few years, we have a new government and they say, oh, it's not so important anymore. We have a new hobby, we have a new goal, and then sometimes it goes a bit less again. So we're ups and downs. We're now at the period we are investing a lot in it. Maybe I'll tell about it later, but this is how the platform was started in the Netherlands. So it's a public-private foundation, and well, this is where it comes from.
I think that is a good point about the long-term part of it, because those things take a long time to develop, and you can't just start a project and think, oh, this is going to change in 2 or 3 years. So that's why you've been going for 25 years. So I'd be very interested if you have maybe 1 or 2 examples of something that worked really well, like a concrete project that you think is a great example of what PTvT has done.
Well, what we noticed when we started researching and why didn't these campaigns work and why are and what is working is we noticed there are huge differences between schools. There's some schools that there are a lot of girls in the STEM subjects and other schools that hardly have any girls. At the time, around between 2000 and 2005, when we studied it, half of the secondary schools, the upper secondary schools, didn't have any girls doing their final exams in STEM. But if you ask this at the schools, they were not really aware of it. So first of all, awareness with schools and teachers that they're not having any STEM graduates, girls STEM graduates in their school is the first thing. So show numbers, tell this story. Then we looked at the schools who did really well, and it turned out to be that in some of these schools, the teachers developed their own didactical materials. And these materials were apparently so good and successful that they attracted a lot of girls. So what we did is ask these schools and these teachers to show their approach to other schools, usually in regional meetings, so other schools can learn from it. And teachers and schools like to learn from each other. Usually if you say it's top down, like this is what you have to do and you better do it, most teachers are like, well, that's my job, so I'm not listening to you. But if they hear it from another teacher, they're a lot more interested. So the awareness and also finding, we say like good practices, or we in the Netherlands we call it like finding places of what is working and then make it available to other teachers. That was one of the things we did a lot. And we measured this, and as soon as we started this, we had a 5-year project on this. The numbers of women between 2005 and 10 went up enormously. We were first under, so in general, we had like 30% of students choosing STEM in 2005, with a minority of girls in the 30%. And after 5 years, they were over 60%. So, and then celebrate your successes, showing that it's working, that makes that people think finally we got something that is working. But because in the beginning as well, teachers were like, oh, we've tried so much and it never works and we're fed up with it. But then if you do find good practices, you share them, also celebrate them.
Yeah, that's definitely important. Maria, if I may continue with you. You wear two hats today. You're here as a professor of international business and entrepreneurship at the University of Southern Denmark, but then you're also an ambassador for Talents for AA. So AA is the automotive aftermarket. Can you explain a little bit what that is, and probably also about what Talents for AA does?
Sure, thank you. So I have these two hats, first of all, because we discussed the role of a university. As you say, universities are talent pipelines, right? We are producing talent. So it's our job to have some results. And unfortunately, we have the same problems in other countries, that we don't have enough females studying STEM subjects, or we have females choosing other things rather. Also in entrepreneurship, so whether it's employment or entrepreneurship, women tend to be underperforming, underrepresented in these sectors. And the automotive aftermarket sector is a very interesting sector, because I'm also a researcher. I'm researching a lot migration, so people who are mobile talents, transferable skills and talents. And the issue is that not all sectors are very inclusive, and not all girls and women actually find their place when they are mobile. So therefore, I looked at this sector, which I have a long history of working with, that this is actually a very inclusive sector. So this is very much absorbing talent of all kinds, because there's a tremendous lack of talent. So just before the pandemic, this sector, automotive aftermarket, is representing the life cycle activities of vehicles after the sales. So when the car or truck or bus is sold, it has to be maintained, serviced, and taken care of. There's a lot of data, there's a lot of trade, manufacturing of parts, and all sorts of activities. So it's a very rich field. So in this field, there are a lot of work, employment, and career and talent development opportunities. However, it's not well known. So we decided among different stakeholders to establish an initiative an association that will specifically foster talent development and job career development of young people, of different talented people from different areas, and look at these qualifications that are needed. What can we do about that? So I am here with the researcher hat, but also as a kind of an engaged researcher in doing a sectoral initiative as well, because we can do things and we can bring these things together. And universities are doing stuff on gender equality, for example, advancing the number of female professors, showing these gender role models, but also in industry we need to do the same thing, so we can actually join forces.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about your personal insights from your research, and why do you think no more women go into the automotive aftermarket or STEM or PTvT in general?
Well, we are coming back to the same thing that we already mentioned. Most women do not perceive these sectors as sectors that are speaking to them. And this is one of the big problems, lack of awareness. These sectors are seen as male sectors, as male-dominant sectors, as sectors that are not inclusive. Also, they are seen as something that is perhaps not so sustainable or not so interesting today. While if you actually look at the career development of those women who are in these sectors, they can have magnificent career opportunities. So we said, let's try to do some work bringing these things together so that we actually communicate better these opportunities. We have created a job platform for this. And it's very important to bring the different stakeholders together. So just like you said, a triple helix or quadruple helix, we need to bring these together and enable this communication and interaction. We also found, because I have researched this topic as well, we also found in research that women, when they notice that there is this sector, it's actually the international female business student who is very interested in getting into these sectors, whereas the male Danish engineering student is the least interested one to get into this sector. So if we look at stereotypes, we are doing a very bad job, because we are looking at the person who is the least interested if we go with the normal targeting. So we should broaden up the way how we target talent and who do we speak to, because that's where the meat is, right? That's where the music is being played today.
I find that actually a very interesting insight, and I'm wondering how many of those misconceptions lead us to not look where the talent is. And I'd probably just take this opportunity to quickly open the floor to any of you if you want to probably also quickly answer the question, why do you think no more women go into STEM or PTvT?
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to weigh in and really agree with what you're saying. Is there's still a lot of barriers that we see when it comes to the transition from school to work. And as UNESCO-UNEVOC, we did some research to understand exactly what happens. And what we see is there's a leaky pipe phenomenon. So this is well explained when you think about the number of girls who access PTvT institutions and who want to learn about sciences. And the time they enter into the labor market, the number is reduced to almost 20%. And once they get into the labor market, they even get less and less because they have to leave the labor market and join other things because of the barriers that we see in the world of work. So if you think about what is happening, you look at it in two ways, and we say there is the dissuasion from the labor market or the industry not to continue its STEM courses or to continue its STEM careers, because to start with, of course, there's the gender gap. There is the ceiling that you see. The ceiling, you cannot get into the management level. There is barriers when it comes to the pay. There's barriers when it comes to people really appreciating the performance of girls compared to boys. And at the same time, there's the other side where you have to make a choice of whether you want to continue with your career or really go into the care that you need to provide for your family, which in many cases, it ends up being women who will take up the burden of childcare. And the work and the industry has not really given a lot of effort, or the society has not provided a lot of effort in terms of incorporating families and business to be working together at the same time. So there's many challenges, but we can already see we need to discuss more.
I would like to add something. We often talk about the average, global average, 5% of women in STEM graduates, 30% in the workforce, that attrition of 10 percentage points. But we don't talk enough about regions, sub-regions, and at a country level. The situation is not the same everywhere in the world. For example, EBRD invests a lot in MENA region, in North Africa, and also in the Western Balkans and Central Asia. And what we find interesting is that, for example, in Tunisia, Jordan, Lebanon, where we have a very low female labor force participation, something like 20%, which is really quite low. At the same time, we have a high level of women in STEM's education, 44% even in some countries, to 55%. And yes, it is true that there is a drop-off, there is attrition when it comes to the women in STEM, but we have an opportunity here that we are probably missing. Equally, in Central Asia and in Western Balkans, we have virtually average women labor force participation and very high, again, very high number of women in STEMs and very high number of women in STEMs occupations. I think we should look into those regions and what is happening and why they are doing something right. There are, of course, problems. We can talk about them as well, but we should also acknowledge that there are some good examples.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to quickly touch on Priscilla. You made a good point there, because we're going to talk about women go into TVET, but then, or women go into STEM, but then they don't stay. I'll actually want to touch on this in our discussion in a bit. And then, Biljana, you're right, it's not the same in every country. And I'm sure you've got a lot of knowledge around that and experience, because the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development operates, I think, in over 40 markets. And not all of our audience is probably familiar with what the European Bank for Construction and Development actually is. So if you could tell us a little bit about that and what the bank does.
Thank you. So for short, it's easier to say EBRD than the full name. So EBRD is an international financial institution that operates in 40 or plus markets. We primarily invest in the private sector. 70% of our loans and equity stakes are in private sector companies. And in that, we provide, as I said, financial loans. We also provide technical assistance, and we help with the policy engagement. So that goes across a number of different areas, from green economy to economic integration to good governance. But where I come from the gender and economic inclusion team. So part of the banks, because bank is also owned by a number of governments from Europe to United States, Canada, Korea, etc. We are also a public institution, so we have a public mandate, and we have a gender strategy and equality of opportunity strategy and targets that 40% of all of our investments have to have, for example, gender as one of the focal areas of our investment. So in that context, when we invest in a private sector company, in a sector, agribusiness or renewable energy, we work with our clients to help them improve number of women in senior management positions or improve percentage of women in technical occupations. We don't, sometimes they already know that this is good for them, and we just help them. Sometimes we need to sell the business case to them and persuade them why this makes good business. It's not just the right thing to do. And what is interesting, I think, from the skills perspective and from the gender perspective, is that we start from the demand side. So it is always we start from the demand for skills. We start with the private sector, the skills that are needed, the occupations that are required, what is market relevant, and in that context, then we work with PTvT schools, universities, ministries of education, ministries of labor of our countries of operation to try to work together to meet that demand, and then I think is complementary to what other colleagues are doing. We work a lot with UN agencies. I've seen in the registration a couple of people from ILO and OECD and UNESCO, but we also work very closely with our shareholder governments and donors. I've seen also Canada, UK, United States, Norway in the audience. Who often have gender as part of their foreign policy goals or development goals, and then we work together to promote that in our countries of operations.
Now, what I really liked about that is that you said you tell them it's not just the right thing to do, that the market will eventually benefit from those changes you implement, and that I think is a really good point. And now, just to bring it back to our STEM session, I want to ask you what the bank does specifically for gender equality, also because you are in that department, and specifically for women in STEM.
Yes, so there are a number of things that we do. I can give you a couple of examples from Turkey, for example. We work with a number of private sector companies in Turkey in renewable energy, in agribusiness, and we work with associations of employers in Turkey to promote digital skills among needs, for instance, that would then be matched with jobs in the companies that we invest in. And sometimes these pilot projects then get institutionalized and adapted by the government in their education programs. So we also provide training for female farmers for digital skills and access to advanced technologies in agribusiness to help them produce high value added products and become part of value chains of our large agribusiness clients, so that to improve the diversity of their value chains, for instance. In Serbia, we work with science and technology parks that are the public-private entities across the countries, which have an element of entrepreneurship. So there are a number of startups from across the country in different sectors, and we promote internships with the gender lens, so to make sure that gender stereotypes are not perpetuated, that positive image of women in STEMs is promoted. There are also women-centric mentorship programs, the standard set of tools that we see everywhere. At the company level, for example, we would promote more female-friendly or women-friendly HR policies and practices. So recruitment, retention, training in skills, related skills, specializing for women. And finally, at the policy level, for example, in Kazakhstan, but a lot of other Central Asia countries, there are still outdated labor laws which prevent women from joining certain occupations, especially in the energy sector. And because we invest a lot in the energy sector, our clients have told us these laws make no sense. They may have made sense 40 years ago. Now they don't. We need to change those. And we have abolished, helped together with other international organizations in Kazakhstan, about 300 occupations were abolished that were banned for women, were taken out of the labor code. We are doing similar work in Kyrgyz Republic and Tajikistan, and we've also found that there are similar laws in Morocco in the energy sector, in even in Bosnia, for example, in the Balkans. So we are working with our private sector companies to advocate, to put pressure on governments to remove those. And once they are removed, then we work with companies to promote. We often have female role models from our male-dominated sector companies to go into primary schools to speak to young girls, to their parents about a choice of career, especially in renewable energy, for example, that is very, very prospective sector. So it's too late when it comes to secondary school or university that we are complaining we don't have enough. But we need to go further down to younger cohorts and their parents in particular.
Yes, and I think we've heard that several times, that we have to like get girls at a really young level, or not just girls. If we're talking about TvT, getting young people into TvT, we have to start at a really young level, because it's in secondary school, it's often already too late for them making their career choice. So, Priscilla, if I can continue with you, can you tell us about why are gender disparities in STEM related TvT an issue?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's no longer just an issue, it's actually a very concerning issue, and I'm going to explain why. So if you think about where we are currently, the future of work, and what has been happening around us, we're seeing so many companies transitioning into the green economy, sustainable ways of practicing, and of course we are seeing the digitalization changing the way we work and the way we operate, happening to us who are sitting in this room. So if you think about what the future of work holds, we have seen reports, especially the latest reports we saw. LinkedIn has just published a paper which they call about the green economy, which really explains that if you think about the future of work and the greening economy, is actually coming faster than we thought. So initially, the economic outlook had seen that the energy transition is going to create around 30 million jobs by 2030, but this is coming out so fast that we had not even anticipated. Just in 1 year, LinkedIn has actually highlighted that the requirement for green skills has doubled from 12% to 25%. And if you think about what this, you ask yourself, how many people understand what a green skill is, or where are we even headed in terms of artificial intelligence and what it can bring? So if you think about this, there's a report by the Outlook Economy which talks about 44% of our jobs are going to be disrupted in the next 5 years. So whatever you're doing now, be careful, because it might change drastically without you knowing. So what is concerning about this data is who are going to benefit from these economic changes and the future of work. And we're seeing these major disparities in terms of who is going to be the beneficiary. So just talking what IBAD does, as well as Asian Development Bank does, they developed a report saying that only 25% of women are prospected to benefit from the future of work by the time we reach 2030. 25% only. And it's even worse if you think about what we are currently doing in terms of STEM, and 25% is basically what we can anticipate at this point. So this is very concerning if you think about what we've been doing in the education system. UNESCO, we just published a 2024 report that says in the last 10 years, it's only 35% of graduates who are in STEM has actually been produced. So the last 10 years, the number has not changed from 35%. So whatever we're doing, we need to double it if we're ever going to really benefit from the future of work and what it entails. So this is no longer a discussion of, oh, what can we do, what can we not do? Because if you think about it, where are the women? The women are in TvT. The women are the people who are doing this repetitive work that we're seeing. Those are the women who represent the big part of the labor market. And if we're going to transition into green as well as digital transition, we are not going to be anywhere. So in the same report, it shows that, the LinkedIn report shows that if you take 10 girls or 10 women, it's only one of them that is going to have a green skill. So if you're talking the future is bleak, only one person in 10 people having green skills, compared to guys or men who are 6 men out of 10 have a green skill. So a question to you who are sitting in this room, do you have a green skill? Do you even know what a green skill is? And are you ready for the transition? So this is why it's very important to have this discussion and to really talk about these disparities in TVET and what we need to do to start addressing some of the challenges that we're seeing. Yeah.
Thank you. So not only are we struggling to have people like in TVET and in STEM, we're also struggling to prepare people for skills that we don't even know what are they going to look like in a few years, or skills that we don't even know are going to exist. So we're struggling with that as well. And I want to ask you, what is UNESCO-UNEVOC? What projects have you got that focus on getting women into STEM professions or into TVET?
Yeah, just to give a background about UNESCO-UNEVOC, we are a designated institute of UNESCO that is based in Bonn, and our focus is only on technical vocational education and training. So TVET is our main area of focus, and we work globally. So being a UN agency, there's, of course, the mandate to really work with member states, and we have to ensure that no one is left behind as long as we do what we're doing. So our work mainly focuses on strengthening TVET systems, as well as increasing cooperation between the different countries and member states that work within the TVET systems. So the TVET systems are structured in a way that we have the national bodies. So these are the ministries of education, ministries of labor, and ministries who are responsible for the TVET output. And we have regulatory bodies that are in charge of curriculum development. We have the governing institutions, which form under the national bodies. We still have the TVET institutions themselves, the TVET institution that you work with a lot. And at the same time, we have TVET technical universities that do a lot of research, as well as we have TVET teachers training colleges. So we work with all these cohorts of members to really try to understand what barriers they experience when they try to upgrade and strengthen their TVET systems. So when it comes to STEM, as I said, one of the output that we have is to do research and to produce content in terms of visibility and anticipating skills that are needed for the future. So as I spoke just briefly about the green skills, and we're seeing that a lot of companies are really changing into the green transition. We really want to bring this to schools and try to tell our policymakers what do they need to include in their policies if they have to review that. And at the same time, they have to mainstream gender equality in every aspect of their work. So for example, what we are doing currently, we are working closely with the government of South Sudan. So we work with 150 countries globally, and at the same time we have 233 centers. We call them UNEVOC centers, which definitely constitute all the four members I've spoken about. So we are working with the government of South Sudan. And why South Sudan is very interesting, because it's a new country and they are actually having a plain canvas where they can structure their systems to really benefit their population. They have the youngest kind of population, with 70% of the population being young people. And at the same time, they don't have any governing systems. They're still working on a policy. So what we're doing is to review the current policy to see, does it incorporate digitalization? Does it incorporate greening? And at the same time, is it just? So UNESCO has a mandate to provide just and dual transition. So this is digital greening that leaves no one behind. So we work with governments in that level to really explain what needs to go there in a policy level. But at the same time, you find that there's always the issue of resources. We cannot do this, we cannot implement this fast enough, especially to teachers. So for example, what we're doing in few countries, we're working with in Jamaica, we're also working in Ghana, we have done this in Zambia, Kenya, and some other countries in the LAC region. We are providing capacity building for teachers on what we call GRP for TVET. So this is gender responsive TVET, pedagogies for teachers. And this is a very good example when you think about what does it really entail. As a teacher, you cannot teach what you don't know. So some of these barriers that we're seeing in terms of biases in classroom, teaching methodologies, having classes that are not inclusive, making girls very anxious in terms of choosing what they want to choose, the perception from teachers, it's all because we have teachers who do not understand what they need to do in classes. So this is the capacity building that we provide at that level of the teachers training. And of course, when it comes to young people, we work with them directly to really introduce what is gender, what are gender roles, what do they need to know, how do you identify bullies in the classroom, and such things. And we produce guidelines and documents on this as well. So I think that answers a bit of it.
Thank you. Albin, if I can continue with you. In the preparation for this session, you mentioned that life sciences might be a bit of an exception when it comes to female participation.
Yeah.
And can you tell us what you think that attracts more women to life science and healthcare?
Yeah. First of all, life science, we have a lot of women in life science activity at all. And but what is very difficult is to attract the women in life science activity and in industry. I believe we need to get a multi-faceted approach to do that. First of all, education. Education, the first point is really education, and we need education with the young girls on school, showing them what are the vision of life science and what can they do in this invisible world. We have seen in France some changes about that, because we have a lot of women at different positions actually in the industry and these different organizations, and this is very encouraged. And I think the second point after the education, we have to address unconscious bias, because we have a lot of difference and there is a diversity gender in between male and female in at school and after and in the university. We have to promote inclusive practices in education and in workplace too, and that's why we are going to do and to develop in ACODIS and in ADECO group about this inclusive attractiveness. And we have training, we have courses with specific formation training, with upskilling, reskilling, and this is really important to develop. Third, and I think you told us that so role models are vital. We have to see the example, what we can do between women, because it's very difficult to see each other in the large position in industry, and we have to explain, yes, this is hard, but we can do that. And with the girl power, this is with the network, it's very important to be a little bit courageous and to spot on this position. Lastly, I want to say about that, then there is a very real impact with women in STEM, because we bring another vision, we bring something else, and we have to develop these particular skills and intention. And this is it's not just number, it's just about inclusive position, inclusive vision, and we can bring something else in the STEM.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about any specific programs that ACODIS does to bring more women into STEM?
Yes, we have a lot of different programs. First of all, we have an association, ACODIS and Elle Bouge, the association Elle Bouge. This association, the target is to meet some young girls with female in STEM and to explain what the job, what they can do, what they can bring, and to get some vision about the STEM. This is the first point, for example. And we have, personally, I have training in the training is women leadership, because it's not just technical skills, it's leadership skills too. We have to develop in the program, and I benefit from the women leadership program in collaboration with Harvard, for example, and we have to develop the leadership team, leadership skill, and that's one of program we have to explain and we have to propose to the women in ACODIS and in the ADECO group, actually.
Thank you. Do we have any maybe reactions to that? I think we've got maybe a little bit of time for a reaction or two. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I would like to add on the last comment that we also have a problem of overqualification. And that means that a lot of times women specifically do not perceive the actual level of talent and their qualifications, and they work in positions that are lower than their level. This is particularly so in case of migrant women, but this is also used as a kind of a discriminatory tool of not getting the job because you have higher qualifications than needed. So we have a dual problem with overqualification. And frankly speaking, I'm also a little bit worried about the AI aspect coming up, because AI often has an inherent bias. So we also need to look at these things. What do we produce so that we're not reproducing old models?
Yes, that seems like women just also need the confidence to know that they have the skills for the job. With that, I want to transition into our discussion, and I'm just going to ask all of you a question. Let's see who of you wants to answer that. Because like you said earlier, Priscilla, so one aspect is to bring women into new fields, bring them into TVET and into STEM. But the other aspect is, how do we keep them there? And what needs to be done to make STEM workplaces more attractive and inclusive for women?
So basically, if you see inequalities in the workforce, it started somewhere, and it started in high education. It went to lower education, all the way to early childhood education. That is where inequalities start. So if you think about why we're not able to keep more women in STEM in workforces, you have to think about where did they come from in terms of, are they empowered enough? Has there been support systems? And we started talking about a learner's journey, and this is understanding from the time someone joins school to the time they leave, what kind of support system and barriers have they have to overcome for them to be able to be where they are. So you find that there's a systemic challenge when it comes to, other than just gender biases, there's a way that boys are prepared from early age. For example, if you think of when you're younger, you'll get a boy will get a Christmas gift as a PS, which is not the same, and they start preparing their minds to getting challenges and trying to understand, how does this work, how does it not work. So if you think about girls, there's a different connotation to it, because there is of that preparation from a young age that you need to start thinking of soft skills. You think of something that are fun, and this is fundamentally taking you all the way back. But now bringing you back to the transition to work, and this is what we are saying. And I like that all the panelists have mentioned something to do with role models and how it's very important to have role models. One of the fundamental things we are seeing, especially in the research side of TVET, we're seeing that there's a huge gap in understanding which courses fall under STEM. Because as I said earlier, there's still the same number of people who are in STEM that have not left. So there's this connotation and idea that STEM is someone who's in a lab doing some research. And even for the example I used, my STEM understanding was biology, physics, and chemistry. And if you think about TVET, those things do not apply directly, and you need to start broadening the competencies that really explain what STEM is. And especially now that we're going into the world of work that is going to be more digital and green, things like farming technology is a STEM course, something to do with plumbing technology, air conditioning and refrigeration activities, construction site management. All these are STEM courses, but we don't create this imaging to our girls that this is a STEM course that they need to pursue. So everybody already has this bias that, oh, I cannot do computer science, is too hard for me. While at the same time, you can be doing erosion management or water harvesting, which is part of a science. So when it comes to TVET, and I'm going to see a lot of you have walked around to see some of the courses that are out there as the skills level, we need to start understanding how can we create more activities so that a lot of girls would know whatever I'm doing, whether it's in catering, has a STEM connotation to it, and it's good. So that being the first thing that people don't understand what a STEM course is, really leaves them not to pursue these courses. I alluded to this point earlier when I said that there's still a lot of structural challenges when it comes to the labor market. So getting into work, as Maria has just said, we're still seeing there's not, women are not readily applying for these STEM courses because they already have this perception, I'm too qualified or I'm underqualified. And this is very interesting in recruitment, where you see a lady would obviously look at a recruitment job opening and want to make sure they are 100% qualified before they apply, which is different from boys and guys who will just apply even if they are 30% into the criteria. So less women are applying for these jobs, and once they get to apply for these jobs, they find now the the structural challenges within the work systems. I talked about challenges when it comes to, is your work really valued the same as that of another person who is male? And we've seen a lot of women responding that sometimes when they do something very well, exemplary, there's some institutions where they'll be told, you are just lucky, you know? So this already dissuades someone to continue working on that. But at the same time, the biggest challenge that we see is this choice that women have to make about caregiving. And one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing is that women have continuously been producing a lot, being the caregivers for either elderly or their own children, and this leads them to leave work. So when you have to make this choice, at the same time, you have to go, okay, I need to take care of my child, and I cannot do that at the same time. So re-entering into the labor market becomes such a big challenge, because if you compare to the peers that you left, they already moved there in management, and you're still here, still having to struggle a bit here and there. So this is why we as the international community, we look at it and say, what can be done? And a lot of Nordic countries have really gotten this right. And I'm happy to see some of the people here representing, because you understand that taking care of children, it's an imperative, it's an economic and social benefit, it's an investment for our country, and this is why we need to continually do that. But the burden of raising children should not fall on one gender, for example. The companies need to review, and there should be like a structural change in society on who is supposed to take care of the child, and can it be done at the same time when you're working? Because these are some of the challenges that would lead. So if this is an imperative to ensuring that we get gender balance in workplaces, then be it, because this is, at the end of the day, if we look at all the challenges, this is the biggest challenge that we see in the work that we do.
Yes, there are definitely many challenges we're still facing, and I want to pick up on a point you made earlier, though, is about this conception we have of STEM, because I'm absolutely thinking of someone who is in a laboratory. But if we think about it, there's so many skills now that are in some way related to technology. Like, I'm a graphic designer and I work with technology every day, but I wouldn't just like think of my own skill as a STEM skill. And maybe I just have time for like a quick reaction to that same question. How do we keep women in those fields? Maybe back to you, Beatrice. We haven't heard from you for a long time.
Well, I think the examples you've all mentioned shows that first of all, there's no quick fix, and what we often do is tell girls, oh, you should do this, oh, to try this, do this, etc. We do all these projects, but in the end, we have to fix the system. And so we say in the Netherlands, let's fix the system and not the girls. And so I think you've mentioned it as well. There's a systemic change necessary. And I think if all companies would work like Albin would take their share in fixing this system, then we wouldn't be sitting here. And maybe we talked about it just before the session, that we're all women here thinking about this subject and why there are not any men. So I think we also need more men to think about this and implement this in their programs, in their companies, in their new policies, etc., etc. And I think there is an interesting opportunity here now, because the new von der Leyen Commission has written a new strategic plan, and in this plan they mention also there is going to be a STEM strategy, and they also want to focus on girls and women in STEM in particular. And I think there's enough knowledge. We know a lot about research, that you have to start young, that you have to continue in education and also vocational education, that you have to continue to make sure that they choose and go to the labor market and they don't drop out. I think in the future we also need more people streaming in this subject, in the workforce, because our work will not always be the same in the end, and maybe through AI or whatever. So I hope this new strategic focus on STEM policy is also an opportunity to get away from small little projects like Girls Go Circular. I'm not sure if there's anyone here from the Commission. They always mention it as a very proud project, but in the end it's just an online project where we reach maybe well, at the max 100,000 people in the whole, women in the whole of Europe. Well, this number of people we already reach in the Netherlands with our approach. So I think a more structural, systemic approach where we fix this system and not specifically the girls, that is going to help us in the end. If I don't want to do this job another 20 years, and I'm not going to be around for that long, so let's fix the system, not specifically the girls.
Yeah, thank you. And like we've talked for this last hour about this, and I've heard about all your initiatives, which shows us that it has been recognized that there is a problem with the gender gap. And it's funny that you mentioned 20 years, because what is your view on like how is this going to evolve? What is this going to look like in 20 years? Maybe because you work in so many different markets, maybe Biljana, you can give us a little insight in what you think this is going to look like.
That's a very ungrateful question. I wanted to say that I started the presentation with a kind of positive note, to say that in Northern Africa or Western Balkans, Central Asia, there are a lot more women in STEMs that we know. But at the same time, there is a big however. They are not in senior management of STEMs companies. So there's a huge gap between men and women when it comes to senior management. So what we try to do is, when we invest in a company, we condition the company to put a KPI to increase the number of women in senior management positions. So that is very important. Secondly, we are seeing already, and if we are not careful in future, we will have a huge kind of horizontal discrimination as well, because we see that women are not in AI enough, in cloud computing. They are not in jobs with data. They are mostly in jobs like product design, testing, middle management, HR, marketing. And so when we talk about large number, we are not seeing where exactly women are. So if this is not looked at, that could be a problem down the road. We also already see that men are earning more than women. So wage parity in the sector is something that needs to be looked at now, for that gap to not grow even higher. And of course, discrimination that exists and gender-based violence that exists against women, that we hear that all the time. So with our clients, we make sure that they introduce initiatives to tackle gender-based violence. And I would agree with you on care. Of course, all that is not easy if women are taking the largest share of unpaid labor at home, from household to child to elderly relatives and parents. That is a huge burden for women. So I don't know, in our work, we again request our companies to introduce some measures to help women who come back from maternity leave, to offer flexible working hours, to offer childcare vouchers, to offer any working from home, any sort of arrangement that women want to have in order to continue working for a company. So these are some of the practical measures that can be done.
Maybe we also can get a quick outlook from you, Maria and Albin. You've got also 20 years of experience in your field. What do you think the next 20 years are going to bring?
I'm going to stay positive.
That's a good note.
Very positive, because we saw a lot of changes all over the 20 last years. So I think this is not a 20 future in the future. This is in the 5 years. I think we are going to be a lot of change, and I think women are most stronger than before, and I think this is a really important, because the world know the impact and what is the new impact we can bring in the STEM, in the company, but in the institution too. And I think the world is moving about that, and it's a very good news from my part.
Thank you. That is positive. Are you going to give me a positive answer as well?
I'm trying to be an optimist. So if we look at the developments, and if we look at the population developments, we are basically forced to go to a better direction, because there's not enough capacity otherwise. So companies need to engage in this triple helix, We need to do a better job because the ecosystem must become more competitive. Otherwise, the companies cannot, the private businesses cannot survive. So in that sense, I believe that rationality and markets will drive a positive development, because that diversity in top management brings better results, brings better profitability. When we foster female entrepreneurs, female career building, we are going to have better results, because that will accumulate over time if we do it. But it's, of course, we have the if, but I believe that we are sensible people in management. We try to find good solutions. If we work for that direction, we are also going to have results.
Yeah, you started off saying you were going to be forced to change direction, and I think that's probably like we left it for so long. At some point, we will have to change direction, and that is somehow a positive outlook. And I think we still have time for maybe a question or two from the audience, if we've got one. Yes? Are we getting a...
Thank you. Well, thank all of you. Really interesting contributions. My name is Alfonso. I'm doing a master's here at Sciences Po in Paris. But I come from working in a project in Mexico that was doing dual vocational training with the GIZ. And one of the most interesting and most important challenges we had was precisely that when we measured with our monitoring exercise gender-related issues, we saw that it was quite gender equal, the dual system. We have almost 50-50. But then when we measure the wages of the graduate people, the graduate apprentices, we realized there was a huge gender wage gap, because mostly women would go into the service-related programs, I would say because of these society-embedded gender roles. And the guys were going mostly to STEAM-related programs or industrial sectors. So we tried to do something about it. We would do small interventions, like you said, with limited scope, like Girls' Days and these kind of things. But then the question remains, how do you actually increment the attractiveness of PTvT or STEAM-related programs in PTvT for young girls? Because as you said, like specifically in PTvT, it might be too late. So how do you start from an earlier age, especially in societies? In this case, I'm putting the example of Mexico, where gender-related roles are quite embedded in the society.
Yeah, Priscilla? Oh, you've not got a microphone. Oh,
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I'm just going to attempt to answer, and of course, someone else can jump in. And I'm going to speak from a PTvT perspective. So the issue of not getting a lot of enrollment, I talked about the learner's journey, and the first issue is about access. Do we have access to STEM courses? And when it comes to access, there's another issue of selection. As you said, the selection, they go to the service industries as opposed to just going to core STEM courses. So one of the ways in which we've seen has been very helpful is through understanding who influences these choices. And if you understand who influences the choices, then you can actually change that. So the first biggest influence is the girls themselves. So they want to be able to say and have a sense of belonging in that kind of STEM. So there's this data that shows that some girls in Nigeria were against STEM courses, especially when it comes to hardcore technical courses, because they perceive it as dirty and womanly, and how are they going to look? You can't wear lipstick and overall at the same time. So this perception itself and the sense of belonging is the biggest challenge that we have to start changing, especially for the girls. Then there's that self-esteem, where you have already been through a lot of gender biases, a lot of stereotypes and norms within your cultures, where you as yourself, you don't see yourself fit to pursue something that is as technical as that. So those are some of the big things that we see. But of course, the parents play a very big role, and the community. So we see societal challenges that come in. We see the parents influencing, because we did just recently a survey on World Youth Skills Day and asked, how did you make up the choice to choose whatever you do now? And most of them say, my parents said I should do it, So we still have that aspect, and we have to understand these parents also come from their own biases and stereotypes where they have their gendered occupational ideas. So understanding who influences is the first approach to really solving these problems and really increasing the number of girls. So we've seen, just quickly, we've seen some of the interventions that we do, especially in community mobilization and increasing access for girls, because we say communities or composition of families and leaders in the community level. So one of the things that has been useful is this tester project. So the tester project is where you combine a few girls before they come into TVET. And remember, TVET has already a very bad reputation because we see it's people prefer to go to higher education like university than TVET. That's another topic on its own. But basically, tester project allows girls to come into a company and see how they can visualize themselves in those industries. They go and talk to Beatrice there, who is sitting as the CEO, and say, I want to be that. That is something I can do. So that visualization is important. And it really ties with what everyone said about role modeling and understanding role models and what they do. And one of the things that we see is useful for role models is not just telling your story of how you made it, but explaining the why. So understanding and conviction is, why are you doing that? Why does it matter? And how does it connect to the future world? I think that's good.
Yes, and I can see Maria nodding along, and I think you'd also like to contribute to that.
Yes, I would really like to comment on the why. In our study, we looked at young people in 3 European countries, and it was quite interesting because when we looked at the gender, it's actually the men who will make this difference, because young, talented male people do not find old male industries attractive. They don't want to work in the place where we have this inequality and no women. They want to work in a modern, flourishing place where they feel that there's equality and development and progress. They will pick that. The smart ones will go for those companies. So the people need to be careful how they manage this development, because they will lose the smart ones. The smart ones will pick the good choice and not go for the big difference, like you say. So I think we have an inherent mechanism in people, and I believe in people. So I think this will make a difference. When they start being vocal about these inequalities, things will change.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question if we've got another one. Yes?
I know you repeatedly spoke about gender biases and things. So is it not a fact then in the whole world, the education system has failed because we have neither been able to address it at the school level, nor are we able to address it at the university level? And since we have 2 university professors, I would pose the question to them. Do you think the universities are doing enough to bridge the gender gap? Why not launch courses specifically in STEM for women? And what role do you think private universities have in this area?
Yes.
Maybe Maria can answer this for universities. Our universities really try to do something about it. We have a big university in the Netherlands, the University of Delft, and they wanted to improve on women or girls in some of their studies, and they wanted to propose that from all the people apply, they have a higher percentage of women they wanted to accept at the university. But then in the end, it was not allowed by the judge to do that, because it was some organizations went to the judge and he said, yeah, that's not allowed, it's discrimination. So in order for universities, if they do want to take a bigger step or sort of say, well, let's get another outcome of the people who apply to university, it was actually very difficult. So we try to have some examples, but that's difficult for the universities so far.
I think the problem is exactly this. Universities, whether private or public, are operating under institutional settings. And these institutional settings are giving, at least in the European context, are giving a very rigid framework, what you can do and what you cannot do. So our tools are quite limited in that sense, what we can do to stretch out somehow to accommodate the female aspects. We are trying our best, but this is, we are working under ministry rules and things like that. So, for example, we are trying to make it easier for women to have children during their studies, but we are already fighting with the examination procedures to create flexibility. So we are looking at nitty-gritty stuff sometimes. So I think you do have a point that we should be doing a better job in this, but it's a hard way to change universities. Some private universities have used tools like internalized childcare facilities or things like that. They have perhaps more, how should I say, more portfolio to work with than we at public universities. But you can believe us that we are trying. We have gender equality committees that we are working on these things. We're collecting statistics. We are doing measures. We are asking people how to improve this and that. But we are also kind of limited in what is doable. And one of the things is also that, which I think goes for also technical and vocational training and universities, we are all subject of cost cutting. And this is something that I would like the systems to rethink. Please do not cut the funds of the talent pipeline, of the producers of talent, because this will be noticed on our level. We will suffer from that. We are not being able to do those things that you are asking because of lack of funding as well.
Thank you. Do you want to comment on that, Diana? I'll give you mine.
Thank you. A project comes to mind in Egypt. In North Africa, there are fewer women than men in the tourism sector, which is quite opposite from many other parts of the world. We found that, and we were trying to increase the number of women in PTvT education in tourism in Egypt. And one of the things is some basic like safety, safeguarding in schools for women, for parents to be sure that women, young women, are going to be okay at schools. That's one of the things that came out of our research. Also, we are trying to. I mean, these are random things. We are trying to make use of role models and influencers, like social media influencers that young people are listening to in Egypt, for example, and trying to promote this this as an occupation for women in that way as well. Trying to find what buttons to press. We're doing analysis of our audience. We're trying to find ways of addressing the concerns that we hear parents have, and I think we really need to be better at targeting our intervention to the audiences that we are trying to promote.
Thank you. Yeah, so the conference theme is moving PTvT to the top of the global agenda, but I think you are right. Every country is different. Every country will have its different challenges, and we need to move PTvT to the top of the global agenda, but then at the same time, we need to look at regions and countries individually as well. I think this is all we have time for today, and I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to all of our speakers for your insights and experiences and for your projects that you told us about, and your contributions have been invaluable, and we hopefully now better understand the challenges and opportunities for attracting more women into STEM. A big thank you goes as well to our conference coalition partners for supporting this important conversation. Now, this discussion doesn't have to end here, because I would like to invite you all to continue these conversations during the conference reception at the Reimagining, to which you are all invited. And it is quite easy to get to. You'll go from the main entrance of the expos, you get the bus N100, and that will take you straight there. And before we close, I just also remind you of tomorrow's exciting sessions, and we've mentioned AI now in these sessions, and the program will kick off at 9:30 in the plenary hall with a session on AI and education. And it features representatives from Autodesk, LinkedIn, Festo, and Microsoft. And hopefully we'll see many of you there. And I hope you have a good rest of the day.